Hey, so here we are with Dave Galas. So happy.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Good. It's like we haven't talked ever.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah. I was trying to remember the last time we saw you. It had to have been in the 90s, right?
No, it was in 99 and 2000 because I moved back to Ohio and we were discussing empty space.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was the last time. And then we hung out a few times after that, and then you guys moved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though we do talk, me and you, we text quite often or Facebook message quite often. But yeah, it has been quite a while.
It has. It has.
Time has gone by way too quick.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't look any older.
Oh, well, it's the magic of internet video. You can't see the grays in my hair, you know?
Yeah, it's so weird though. You really don't.
No, you do. You look pretty much the same.
That's how I feel about you guys. I feel like it's just been like we were working on music a year ago or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's hard to believe that it's been about close to 3 years when In Flickers was finished. I mean, it was released later in the year, but we were really wrapping it up in the spring of 18. There was just a lag with project because of the backlog in vinyl production.
Right.
Otherwise, it probably would have been out in the summer. But time flies, I tell you.
Absolutely, it does. God, I think it's been like 3 or 4 years since my last time. I think it was 3 years since my last album, and that was just a compilation of just garbage that I was working on for the last 7 years before that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was garbage, but probably better to say stuff.
Stuff.
Hey,
sure.
I really like that hat you're wearing there. That's a very cool looking hat.
Oh, thanks, man. That's special ordered that from some website in Europe.
So we were talking.
Thank you, though. Thank you for sending it. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well,
I
think it's my favorite. Go ahead, Tara.
We were talking a little bit before we started recording about what your plans are for your music and stuff. So lay it on us.
Oh, it's been a while. It's been a while. I haven't done much this past 10 years, of course. I helped with the last 2 albums I put out. Were one in 2017, but there was a time where I wasn't sure I wanted to continue doing music, just because I don't know, the obligations that you feel when you're doing it and sort of the goals that you put upon yourself. But I think after this last year, I realized I think it's time to start getting back into it, start working on it full time, or as much as I can, just for fun and just to do it for myself. I think there's a lot of there's film directors, in fact, that they do films, and then after a while they get old, they kind of lose that passion for doing film, and then eventually they kind of decide, restart, and they want to end up doing it for themselves and end up having fun with it.
Yeah.
So my goal was for just even my music, was to try and do like an EP every 3 or 4 months. That's just one song every month. Every 3 or 4 months, release what I have as an EP, and then maybe at a year or so, see if I can get it pressed.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Right.
I think, and me and you have talked about this in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You work on an album, and you put so much into it, and when you're done, you feel spent to a degree. And I can't tell you how many times after an album I felt like, well, this is it. After A Line That Connects, I remember we were driving to Ohio for a vacation, and telling Tara, Line That Connects really turned out really well. I have nothing left to say, so we can just quietly go away. And then somehow, a year later, a few new songs come out, starts percolating, and then In Flickers came out, and then it was the exact same thing for me. It's like, okay, well, I said everything I could say. I guess I'll just go away. And now here, a few, 3 years later or whatever, and you end up doing one song, and then one song turns into a couple. Now I'm thinking of some other stuff, which I've talked about in other podcasts about a potential EP coming out this summer. And as we were just talking about before we started, maybe the three of us right here will do a collaboration and be part of a split single that we had previously committed to, but we backed out just because the other band had some commitments going on, and I had another song going on. So I understand your angle for sure. I think if anyone in the world, I think me and you sort of understand that angle of like, I'm passionate, but that passion can drive you to want to do music all the time, but it can also want you to quit music a lot of times because you just let so much out. And sometimes you're just like, man, I need a recharge period. I just can't do it right now.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, it was interesting, actually. I think after The Line That Connects, I was like super motivated after it was finished. I was like, I'm going to just keep writing music, Yeah. And I think, and some of those songs ended up being on the last album I did. But no, you're absolutely right. I think you push yourself so far to complete an album. And when you finish that album, you think, immediately, like mentally in your head, you're like, this is it. There's no way I can ever do another album again. I remember my first album. I was like, I have no idea. I'm done. I don't have anything else I can write about. And like you said, just a year later, a few months later, you start just, messing around with guitar, and all of a sudden an idea turns into a song, and that, out of that comes another song, and it all starts to build up again.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I remember after we did Cold, and then, you went back to Arizona, and I was petrified about working on Estrella because Cold had set the bar so damn high. I thought, oh my gosh, can I replicate that, especially with Dave not here? I was pretty nervous about the whole thing, and that's pretty much been the way it's been since. You do an album and you think, wow, that really turned out well. Like in the second era, I did Quiet Moments, and when we're going into A Line That Connects, I was nervous. Like, what if that same level of magic doesn't, or connecting and really creating something that really works. In fact, just today I was working on tracking a song, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if I can't record it like the previous song that I just did? What if that last song was the last good thing I ever did, and it's over now? And it's been that way for a long time for me.
I think it's probably something that we have in common with people who have creative or in creative arts. It's that constant stress of, am I going to be able to do something else after this? How can I possibly write something or paint something or record something now after you've accomplished something? And I think sometimes, like I always see people who are creative have sort of an alter ego, and it's that alter ego. I think that's that creative part of them. And, when you finish a project up, you fulfilled that sort of need, and you put it away for a while. And then I think after a while, that alter ego starts growing hungry again. Like you need to fulfill it with creating something else again, start writing more music, painting, whatever it is, drawing.
Well, and don't you also think it's kind of like, for a lot of people, you kind of feel like you're pulling the wool over someone's eyes. And so you're like, okay, well, I accidentally did something really great.
Yeah.
I'll probably never be able to do that again. It was an accident that it turned out well last time. I don't know if I have it in me to accidentally do it well again.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I feel. I feel like a charlatan at times.
Yeah, totally.
Like
imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I back both what you say there. I remember back in the 90s when we toured, I always felt like we we'd come in and be like, oh my gosh,
smoking mirrors.
We're with professionals now. The jig is up. We're going to be exposed. somehow people would be like, wow, that's amazing. I'm just like, oh yeah, success. We tricked them again.
It's like a magic trick.
Yeah.
Yep. The playing live is like, it's an entirely different skill set. And it's just like, man, we spent so many years in a bedroom recording our music, everything's under our control. And then once you step out of that safe space, we're just like, God, we don't have no idea what we're doing here, And I think that was my biggest problem with playing live was like, I just felt like the biggest amateur, I'm like, I feel like I'm faking this, this is not, you get bands who play live like 2 or 3 times a week for years and years and decades. And they have developed that skill of playing live. And we're like studio people. We do everything in our bedrooms and we have to go play live. And it's just like, it's like the worst thing ever. You know what I mean? It's just, it's where I'm, shut in basically, I don't want to be out there playing in front of people.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, and I literally was a trained monkey because Mike just showed me, I don't know how to play the keyboard. He was just like, you press these keys, I memorized it and I was good to go. But if I forgot.
You played fine. I mean, you had played keyboards before, hadn't you?
No.
Oh, really?
No. Never. I had cheat sheets on when we did the cold tour because I was so paranoid about forgetting my parts that I had little crib notes and I would flip them for every song, even though I knew the songs by heart, but I was so petrified that I would blank out and then be lost. Yeah. And it was just the 2 of us on stage at that point. So if one of us is out, it's really freaking obvious.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
You're talking about the studio thing versus live. And I did an interview a few years ago or something. And I was telling them that I don't think we ever really made the live transition because we were so studio oriented. And that's how you ended up being the band, is that we were sort of like the Tempe Rejects, and that, we were just 2 studio musicians and somehow we gravitated together. And I don't think that the people that sort of pushed us together realized the Frankenstein monster that they were making that just would blow out of Tempe and be like, we're out of here and we will go on to bigger and better things. But I never felt that I've made the live transition, because I think one of the best shows I've ever played, if not the best, was the Night of Beautiful Noise. And what we did there was we just literally took the studio and put it on stage.
Exactly.
And just did what we did in the studio, but we did it live. But once touring came about and we had to replicate the songs on the albums and had to deal with live technical aspects. I mean, both of us are very crafty in the studio, but pretty naive with live sound. And oh my gosh, that Stark Corner tour, it's like it was a 3-member tour. It was me, you, and feedback.
Right. It's true.
Yeah.
We should have just played noise the entire set.
Well, the whole concept that I had about when we did Beautiful Noise was, I realized that Lycia was a studio band and there was going to be absolutely no way to do that justice live. And so I came up with this idea of creating 2 parallel bands, the studio Lycia and the live Lycia. And that's why I initiated the line Last Thoughts Before Sleep, because I thought, this is going to be a live song. We'll never record it in the studio. And then we'll have our studio stuff. So we play live. We'll play a whole different set of stuff. Of course, when you're touring, that doesn't work because you're touring. And as you probably remember, when we played in Hollywood on the Stark Corner tour, there was some guy there the entire show screaming, "Play down, play down." So it's like the only thing he probably owned was Across This Gray Land. And so he was screaming this the whole set. Well, people want to hear the songs on the album, as do I when I go to see a concert.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear this obscure shit they never heard of before.
until after the fact, and then they hear it on a live album. They're like, "Oh my God, that's the greatest thing I ever heard." Right. So I'm not going to say that about Last Thoughts Before Sleep, because you were there, Dave. You remember that night. It was a insanely magical night in that there was a shoegaze festival,
Right.
and we were the band that nobody knew, but we stole that show, and the applause we got that night and the attention. I mean, we went there that when we left, I thought, oh my gosh, we've made it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I don't know if we've ever done a live show as good as this after.
It was it was definitely surprising because I remember after we got done with our set, how the reaction we had from the people that were there. And then obviously finding out that there was a cable snake that nearly killed Mike Plaster, of course.
Yep. I told that story in a previous one. It was crazy.
Yes, that's right.
I just remember, and you probably, when the light guy was coming around and he was asking all the bands what they wanted for lights. And I remember, I don't know what band it was. Maybe it was Half String. They were like, just put a blue light on stage. And the next band was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I remember I went to the light guy and I said to him, make it seem like a UFO just landed. And I went to the sound guy and I said, turn it up as loud as it possibly can be. I wanted to make an impression. And I think we made an impression.
Oh, yeah. It's funny because I actually ran into the original version of that song. When we originally got together, we sort of put together that 20 minutes of music. And then we hadn't talked to each other, like a month went by, and you went back and redid it all.
Yeah.
And that's what we ended up using. But I originally just came about the original tracks for that, which didn't actually, what you came up with was far superior than what we had before. So it ended up.
Do you still have it?
Yeah, I do. Yep.
You got to send that to us. I'd love to hear it.
Okay.
It's probably radically different. I mean, what happened was, I didn't really, I wanted it to be really chaotic. And then when I was redoing it at the end, I was just like running all the synths through distortion, and I was just tweaking the parameters. And
Nice.
It's just one of those happy accidents where everything just went right. And there's a part in that performance where you're on stage and you're making noise and you're twisting the parameters, and somehow, some way, everything just tweaked right as we were getting ready to go into the Sun Beats Hard portion, and you're just twisting this like oscillation or something, and it just sort of goes, it just sort of like, and then the drums kick in. It sounds so rehearsed and it sounds so perfect. And that's those happy accidents like that. You can't, it's just, that was purely magic, that performance and how it played out.
Oh yeah.
I don't think we could replicate that. And so it's really good that we left it as a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Tara and I tried performing the song one time. In fact, it was a show that you probably remember. It was in Pittsburgh at an art gallery, and you got, we were driving separately, and there was a snowstorm or something. You got separated from us and you couldn't find the club.
That's right.
That night, we tried playing that song and it just didn't work. We
did it in New York City once.
I thought we just did it one time, but
no, we did it at Downtime.
But neither time did it really work.
It wasn't as loud.
It wasn't as loud and it wasn't dynamic. It's one of those things that just that night in '93, it just worked.
Yeah.
And it was, we sort of peaked with Lycia Live with the first show. And I think the last official, what I consider to be the last Lycia show that Tara and I did at Irving Plaza in New York was sort of the second best one. So the two best shows were the first and last. We did one other show here in Scottsdale in 2009, which was just, I don't even really like to consider it a Lycia show because it was just so weird and there was a lot of issues and it just didn't work out.
There's always is, like I was saying, it's just like, it's one of those things, like I imagine if we had continued, or if I was still doing live stuff, continue doing shows on a regular basis and progressively, evolve and get better,
It did get better. It got better.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why Cold is such a rock solid performance album is because of the touring we did leading up to it. We toured pretty much that whole summer going into the fall. and then went to record that album. And the performance on that album, I listen to it sometimes and think, man, we were a fine-tuned band then. But as always with almost everything in my life, timing and being out of sync. I always say all the time that I lived a life out of sync.
Yeah.
And we did this, what potentially could be Lycia's greatest album, and then we're just like, I've had it. We all just sort of went our own way. And in a lot of interviews after A Line That Connects, I always told people that A Line That Connects is the album that would have followed Cold if we would have all stayed together. Because I think we would have continued in that progression, and we would have probably made that style of music. And I think if we would have just continued, who knows what would have happened. But hey.
Right.
We were young and dumb.
I mean, I've spent my entire career being young and dumb. Now I'm old and dumb. I'm always making strange decisions. Some kind of subconscious self-sabotage, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's always an internal battle, I think. It's,
yeah.
And it's interesting because, when I left, I didn't leave because I really wanted to. It was sort of like I was terrible with finances. I was young, like Tara said, I was just young and dumb. I was terrible with finances. I was literally broke. And I was like, my first reaction was,
run.
Exactly, run back home. And I think it took me 3 years to realize that was kind of a stupid idea. I should have stayed.
It is dumb. It was dumb on all of our parts because it was I think because we were around each other 24/7, you get on each other's nerves, and instead of just like being an adult and being like, dude, what the fuck? And then like talking about it, you just internally go, dude, what the fuck? And then go hide from the problem, Like, it's all cool now because we're all friends and everything, and it is what it is. But it's like at the time, it was just like, well, I'm not going to talk to him if he's not going to talk to me. And, just dumb.
I think also it goes back to the whole thing of the studio band becoming a live band.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize the level of pressure because before, we were just making music, and now we're on a label. And we're expected to be important on that label, and we're getting national, international opportunities and exposure. And suddenly you realize you're at this higher level, and the pressure is there. And because we didn't really, I always felt that Lycia was perceived to be a lot bigger than what we were. And so for me, you talk about being scared. I was always scared back then because I thought we got to get on tour and we got to be doing these rock solid professional shows. But I always felt like we had to like compromise on so many levels on the live front because
we didn't have the money.
We didn't have the money. And so we couldn't have a sound guy. We didn't have a light guy. We couldn't bring a couple extra musicians along. We had to do it on the cheap. And you're just thinking, people are really expecting these epic performances. And I just, for myself, I can only speak for myself. I thought, I don't know if I have it in me to give them what they want. And so there was this pressure on all of us. And, like you said, we were young and I'm as aloof as you. I like to stay in my house, but my dream life is just to be able to stay at home all the time.
Right.
And so suddenly, you take these aloof people that would prefer to be at home, and now you're on the rock and roll summer tour. I mean, you remember that tour in '95? We were driving around like, hey, there's the Deadheads again. Every place we went, there was the Deadheads. Like we were like following the Grateful Dead around. Every rest stop we went to was like
Tad. Everywhere we went, Tad. Was that the band?
Tad and Clutch.
Tad and Clutch. Everywhere we went.
Every place we went, they had played there like the day before or something, and we all sort of like yeah. I remember we were all like in Boston at the Middle East, I think it was, and everybody had just coalesced, and we were all playing at the same place at the same time. We were downstairs, and they were like upstairs. And we're like, hey, there's that band that's like we always see the flyers.
Right.
But they look as miserable as us. I remember seeing the one guy. I think it was the main guy in Ted. He was sitting in his van, looking just as happy as we were, which was, like, oh my God, I just want to be home.
Right. Right.
Tired.
You're tired. You're constipated. You're just pissed off.
Yeah,
Well, and
yeah.
they were crammed in that teeny tiny car.
A
Mhm.
Geostorm. Yeah, that was a blast.
Oh my God. When we were driving around in a Geostorm, whoever sat in back would get pelted by your cigarette ashes every time.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and
I'd
I
be
also
like,
remember driving into we were getting ready to go into the most busy part of the tour into Florida. We're driving down the freeway, and I said, I'm driving. All of a sudden, the car just goes boom, and I'm gliding, and we just glide off the freeway on a Sunday afternoon and glide right into the only gas station in probably like 20 miles. And we were stuck there. And I had to walk through a swamp to get to the town of Live Oak to rent a car so we could go down. And then we went to Florida. And I don't think I slept for like 4 days because we went down to Miami, played a show.
Mhm.
I think Jason Wallach got married. Jason Wallach of Unquiet Void got married. So we attended the wedding, and then we recorded a comp song with them, and then we went to play Tampa. Then we went to Atlanta. We went back to Live Oak to get the car that had been fixed, and then we went to Atlanta.
Hey,
And
remember we rented
I had
that?
slept it off.
Remember we rented that van, and what didn't they screw up the tires on it or something crazy, or was that Sam's van? Remember
No,
an oil change or something, and they screwed something.
that was the Project Van on a later tour. We had an oil
That
change.
was also in Florida, I think, wasn't it?
I can't remember.
I think it was.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Florida, that's my message.
But that's the level of tour that the Burning Circle tour was. I mean, we were driving around in a Geostorm with a rooftop carrier. Dave, who's the biggest guy in the band, was jammed into the back seat along with an amp. I mean, like all this other stuff is your rack. And I had my seat pushed all the way to the forward, driving like this. And we'd go days without sleep. But I mean, you know what? It was crazy and weird, but man, I miss that sense of just free living day to day. You just like, whatever, I don't care, man. But I could never do that.
What was
Speaking of
that?
the Burning Circle, Tara has a question about the Burning Circle. What?
Oh yeah, did you see that guy commented on your post that he wanted us to talk about the Burning Circle?
No, I didn't. I haven't logged in to that Facebook account yet. No, I saw something that said he had interviewed you and you were like something about me being a dick or something like that.
No, what? I said I was surprised I didn't say that you were a dick. No, he said that he interviewed me about you, and I said that you were an amazing musician, and I responded with, I'm surprised I didn't say he was a dick, but I was kidding.
That's awesome. I'm not an exceptional musician. I'm a hack.
Actually, I think it'd be fun talking about the Burning Circle because I have a job now. We all have jobs. I mean, it's hard to make a living off of music, especially when you're not touring. And I mean, of course, COVID derailed a lot of the newer bands. But I have a job, and it's an important job, and of course, I want to be a musician full time. So I don't really like my job, and so every day for the last, probably 20 years, I take an hour lunch and I walk, and I spend my entire lunchtime walk thinking about music. And when I think about the best times for me, the most happy times in my life for music, I think of the current era, which I'm completely satisfied with. But in terms of the old era, I think of two specific time frames that are my happiest times. One is the very early days when John Fair and I were just working on music all the time. And the second one was the recording of the Burning Circle.
Oh, right on.
It was a very happy time for me because I came out of that really bad funk mental state I was in. That was a day in the Stark Corner, and suddenly life seemed like there was hope again and everything was good. And then after A Beautiful Noise, we did the Start Corner tour, and as difficult as aspects of that was because of technical issues, we literally spent probably a year and a half rock solid in your home studio in Tempe. And I always remember that as like really good times because we were just kicking out a lot of good music and we were really clicking in the studio, and just going to Burning Circle really, I think went into a very new direction for me, and probably for you too. I think we went into a completely new territory, and I still remember, all those. I'd get over there in the late afternoon, we record in the evening, and we did it like 4 or 5 times a week, and for like a year and a half almost, from including Bleak and the Burning Circle. And so, what are your perceptions of that time frame?
Yeah, that was a wonderful period of time. Actually, it was really nice because I remember, every afternoon you'd come out, you pull up, and then we go right into the studio. We'd open up the doors, the double doors, and you get that smell of there was orange blossom smells, back then. It was so nice and peaceful. And then you had everything prepared. So we would just get everything set. We'd do like a sound check, see how you liked it. And then you do we record like the acoustic guitars for 4 songs. And then we'd go back, and then you do keyboards or something else, or your electric guitar parts. And then I would play to you what I did before on some of the previous songs, and you would say, okay, I like this, or can you change this a little bit? It was an extremely productive period of time. And I have some great, very fond memories of spending those days in the studio with you. And I think, if financial obligations put aside, if all 3 of us had a chance, if we could say, we could live work in a studio and do nothing but work on music, we would probably be putting out like an album like a month, easily, because we just get into that routine of just working. And that's how it was in Burning Circle. I think we were really at a creative peak. We could just we were just writing music, and you had every week you came in with more songs and more material, and you had it so well prepared. And I think that's what really made for the extremely strong. The first disc is just so well done because your parts were just mathematically perfect, and like you had everything scripted and ready to go and very well prepared. And it was easy to record. It was like we ran into a little problems here and there, but because we didn't have things like automation, we didn't have what we have now, the technological innovations that we have that we can use when we do music. Back then there was more challenges there, with working with only 7 or 8 tracks, depending on if we're gonna sequence a bunch of stuff. But it was incredible. I look back on that with really, really good, great memories. So
for me, the reason why everything was so prepared is that was the first time in my life after the Start Corner tour, I didn't have to work except for just occasional, very short-term temp jobs, because it was the first time that I was actually making enough royalties to squeak by a living. And so during the Burning Circle time, I was living with your buddy Jason and Matt Half String, renting a room in a house that I was sharing with them. And so I would spend my days when you were at your job demoing songs, and a lot of the songs were already demoed well before. So when I'd bring songs into your studio, I already had versions that I recorded on a 4-track that had the acoustic guitar, 2 electric guitar parts, and the drum machine parts already done. And so I was bringing in stuff that I had already demoed and was familiar with. So it was just getting it in your studio and re-recording them with, good mic placement actually, we didn't even do mic placements for the acoustic guitar, which is what I exclusively do now. I never record direct on acoustic guitar. I do it with the mic. But back then, you think about this. This is sort of amazing. I had that Applause acoustic electric, and we ran directly out of that cheap ass pickup,
right?
Which sounds so direct. and yet somehow we made it sound like a real acoustic guitar played live in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, hey man, I'm just gonna stream it for free, I guess. But you know, our ability to make stuff sound major label quality
Right.
in an 8-track cassette studio. I mean, we should probably get some kind of like honorary Grammy or something for that, because it doesn't seem fair that bands that go into studios that have everything they could possibly want, equipment wise, and some producer that that leads them away. We had minimal equipment, and we really got the best of that. I mean, I remember recording vocals in that little like side closet room in there.
Right.
It was like 110 degrees in there. I was like, I'm gonna pass out, but we just pile drive through those songs, and we didn't care. And then we'd get done, and we'd go and stand in front of your house, and your dad probably was pissed off as hell because I'd leave about 20 cigarette butts on the curb. But
Right.
it was good. It was a good time, very productive time, and and it was also at a time where Lycia was definitely taking that next step from being. I mean, it was at that time that, you know, major labels were even coming around. I just saw on the news a couple of days ago that the woman from Megaforce Records had passed, and wow. No. And the thing about it is that around that same time, Project Records had hooked up with Megaforce Records, and Johnny Z there was pretty instrumental in getting us distribution, I believe, through ADA, which is Warner Brother Records distribution. And so to a certain extent, it was at that time we went from being a smaller indie band to being a band that had major label distribution. And so, you know, it was a time where it seemed like that all the dreams that I had in the 80s that consistently got dashed, it looked like it was going to happen. It really did. And I was super excited about that whole time. And I remember us standing out in front of your parents' house, because your studio was in this really cool space in the back of your parents' house, and what I am assuming used to be probably like a storage room or a porch or something that was converted. And it was about the perfect little home studio that I can imagine. And I also remember we would occasionally take breaks and go swimming.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
So actually, it was really awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
It really was. It it was interesting because, you know, it's like, as a musician, you know, as a kid, you know, you think about what you want to do. You start working on music, you get a 4-track, you work on music. And then when things actually start to happen, when success starts to happen, sometimes you're not prepared for it. And I think, and I know for myself, I'm like, I thought I was prepared for it, but when things start happening, I realized I'm totally not prepared for it. You know, and even people like John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, he wasn't prepared for it. You know, he had to drop out for a while because he just, it's so overwhelming, you know. And I mean, everything you dream about, everything you want as you know, as you're doing music in your bedroom, you want to be signed to a major label record or, you know, record company, and you want things to happen, but you're not prepared for it. And then when it happens, it blows you away, and it throws you off your feet.
It was like a tidal wave. When we moved to Ohio, I didn't really talk a lot to you about it. I talked a bit to Tara about it, but there was like all these opportunities that were coming our way that seemed unrealistic to me. They seemed so big. And I was so intimidated by them that I was turning them down because I was just afraid.
Right.
I was afraid. And I lived with a lot of guilt for through the 2000s, when I just sort of went AWOL, because I thought, I worked my ass off from 1981 on, and when the opportunities came, I was afraid, and I would say, "Oh, step back, hold on, this is going too quick. Let me step back, let me think about this." And Tara would always be like, "Oh, I think we should do it." I'm like, "Oh, you crazy, you stop being so We got to be realistic about this. But the reality is I was afraid. I was frightened beyond belief that I was going to be exposed as a fraud and that I was going to be up someplace and it was just going to fall apart. And so tours were being offered to us, shows were being offered to us, deals were being offered to us, and I turned them down left and right. I don't want to go into anything specific because, you know, it seems ridiculous to talk about like so-and-so said this or this label said this. But all I will say is that offers were there, and for some bizarre reason, I turned them down.
Yep.
Well, that's insecurity. I was ready to freaking jump off a building. I still am kind of that way in a way, but I just think it was, like Dave said, kind of fast. And then we had so many like technical problems when we did try to play live, and we knew we needed to add more musicians and we know we needed the sound man, but we didn't have the financial backing at all to do that. And at that point, bands didn't get paid anything. Like you were lucky if you got more than $200 a night. You can't finance a tour on $200 a night when you have zero label support, like literally zero label support.
Let's be fair. I mean, they did a lot of advertisement and we did get a van from them, but I mean, they were in the same, Project was in the same situation we were. We were all thrown into this world that was bigger than what any of us were. There's always this perception, that Project was the new 4AD and that Lycia was this bigger band. I mean, we had people asking us if we flew into the shows. There was this perception that we were all bigger, and then we were all out there trying to present that thing like, yeah, we are that big. But so Project gave the support to us that they financially could afford to do. And, it was all beyond us. I mean, this was uncharted territory for every one of us. And it was difficult to navigate.
I think one of the funniest things was when we went to that show in Toledo to play with Type O, and we pulled up in that little tiny car, and they had like 3 buses, and like all the other bands had these like U-Haul trailers and like big old vans, and we're pulling in a little Geostorm parking right.
I just told that story on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and I was like, we're not parking in there. That's too embarrassing. So we went and parked in a regular parking lot and carried our equipment in because I just thought this is just going to be too humiliating. But I mean, we ended up not playing that show. It was just,
that was a bad day.
It was a weird day. You know what?
A disaster.
It would have been an absolute disaster. In fact, I feel fairly confident if we would have done that show, we probably would have stopped doing music the next day because it would have been a disaster.
That's true.
A very large.
To death.
I mean, it was a large venue. It was a summer sunny day, hot as hell. There was a quarry next to it where people were swimming, and it was all a bunch of metal fans. And then we were, because Type O Negative liked us, we were going to play just before them. Yeah. That would have been a disaster. And Sam from Project was coming in to do sound, and he was late. He wouldn't got there in time.
Yep.
And they told us that we weren't going to have stage monitors, and we were an electronic band that had no amps. It would have been the last day of Lycia. We would have played that show, and we would have probably very quietly rode back in the car from Toledo to Streetsboro, where we lived at the time, and said, it's over.
Right.
I'm done. I'm not playing again.
It was a fun day, though.
Right. It
was a weird day.
Did you guys go swimming in the quarry?
No,
I just walked around, got sunburned.
Yeah, we all had heat stroke. That's about it.
And to top it off, for some bizarre reason, I mean, this is a common theme in my life. I decided that would be a good day to stop smoking. So I spent the day roaming the crowd, bumming cigarettes, including sneaking onto the Type O Negative bus, bumming cigarettes from Kenny at Type O Negative. And he's like, hey, nice to meet you. And I'm like, hey, you mind if I have one of your cigarettes? he looked at me sort of funny. He's like, yeah, here. And then some guy, I think it was a buddy, a person we knew back then, Sid from West Virginia. He just came out of the blue as a lifesaver. He was like my hero today. He's like, here, I got a whole pack. Do you want it? I was like, oh yeah, give them to me.
Why the hell would you decide to quit smoking so randomly?
You've been married to me for 20 plus years. You know the answer. I mean, this is the kind of decisions that I make in my life.
It was such an awkward day. It was fun though.
And we all got sunburned in like just select places. We had like someone had sunscreen, but we all forgot like one place. Mine was like right here. For some reason, I was like, had my shirt unbuttoned. Didn't have sunscreen. It was like, and I was like, oh my God, my chest. It's like a piece of bacon.
You had your gold chains, your chest hair and your gold chains popping it.
Yeah. You know, that whole Burning Circle tour was a trip. And you guys obviously remember this really well, but when we played Detroit, I
can't remember Detroit. What happened?
Well, first of all, we got there and we thought it was a regular show. Us and Trance of the Sun showed up, and it turned out to be promoted by the club tour night. And there was some other band from Texas called Pocket Fishermen. Super cool guys. Super cool guys. They were like a punk band.
They were really nice.
And so we were like, we'll let you guys play first. Well, I mean, we'll let you guys play last because we were just like, we want out of here. And I remember after the show, we were like, this show was like the worst show of the tour. And they said, this is the best show of the tour for us.
There were like 5 people there.
But I also remember this. We pulled up and someone laughed and said, you're not going to want to park there. And I was like, this is a great parking spot.
Yeah.
Well, we learned after the show why. Remember, we came out and the entire car was covered with mayflies.
Like completely covered.
Completely covered. It was like a winter snow. And I literally was like wiping them off with my arms. They were everywhere. And for
years later.
Years later in your old room in Streetsboro.
Oh my God.
We made that the music studio after you moved. And I put all the tour crates in there. It was literally like 4 years later, I'd open the tour crates up to find equipment, and there would be like 25 dead mayflies in there still.
And glitter.
And glitter. Glitters and mayfly. That's the Burning Circle tour.
That night also was the night that I went blank on stage and forgot how to play one song. And I said, skip that song. That was the very night that made me write crib notes for the following tour. Because I never wanted that to happen ever again. Remember? I was just like, skip this song.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I got that frozen brain thing.
Oh my God. The Pocket Fishermen. I totally remember that.
I should Google them.
I mean, they were super nice guys, and they were just like us. They were just a band that had a record out, and they were just touring the country. But I mean, it's situations like that where you pull into a town and you're like, all right, man, we're gonna rock out Detroit tonight, and it's gonna be a good show. And then you're there, and you're like, a dose of reality. The club owners are just treating you like you're just some.
Remember, they didn't have direct boxes either, or something. There was like,
yeah, we had to rig something up with between ours and Trance of the Sun's equipment. But I mean, it's funny because
like $700, didn't we, from the show?
I can't remember. I just remembered that tour was really strange because we would play some places and it was like, wow, like when we played Limelight in New York City on the 4th of July, I was like, oh my gosh, we're playing in New York City and we're headlining on the 4th of July at the Limelight, and the place was packed, and it's moments like that when you first start playing music that you dream about. And it just went so well. And then you're like, a couple days later, you're playing some other place, and you're just like, wow. It was like, I mean, luckily we always had halfway decent attendant crowds, but sometimes you show up at some of these clubs and you're just like, what in the world? I mean,
Right.
we're on
Like,
tour, but this is pretty rough. I mean, do you have any equipment at all?
Yeah, no. We barely had any equipment at all. I remember when we were staying at the Omni, was that Virginia?
Oh, yeah.
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 And after the show, we'd come back and I was walking around the hotel with Scott from the record label. Is his name Scott? I can't remember.
Oh.
And we ran into the violin player of the Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah.
In the lobby, and the guy thought we were waiting to hang out with him. And I can't remember his name. I feel really bad. And we were like, who the F was this guy? And he's like, I think it's the violin player of the Dave Matthews Band. and we're taking the elevator back to our room, after we'd played. And we were hanging out, and Trance to the Sun was just a couple rooms down from us. And we were trying to figure out how to sneak like people in to stay the night without us getting kicked out of the hotel. It was ridiculous. It was fun.
That was the whole experience than what I had, because I went straight to the bed, like to the room and went to bed.
And I had a completely different experience because besides the Dave Matthews Band staying at the hotel that night, they were filming a movie.
Yeah.
That's right.
And the woman that was in Linda Hamilton and was it Martin Sheen, or it was one of the Sheens?
I think
what?
So. I think
they were staying there too, and they were doing a movie. And so even though we were done doing our show and everyone was crashing out, I wanted to see what was going on. So I walked down to the street and I just start walking around. And there's all this activity going on. And finally this guy runs up to me and he goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just walking along." And he goes, "You're on a movie set. Get out of here." So I just randomly walked onto the movie set. And I'm like walking up and down the street. So they have all these extras. There's all these extras that are just walking. So I'm just walking along. I'm probably stopping and looking at stuff. And they like kick me off the set.
Cameras.
We should, I don't know what the name of that movie is, but we should check it out sometime. There's a chance that I might just be
I'm sure we
walking
can figure it out.
That's awesome. It's a real experience during that time.
That was funny.
Fun time.
That was crazy time. And after, then, what was that? I can't remember. Never mind. My thoughts have passed. So I can't remember what I was going to say.
I remember when we were in Miami and we were at Jason Wallach's house. So we're staying the night. We finished the show, and I was sitting at the bar, and this lady was hitting on me, and she was like saying, "Oh, my husband, she does lights. He could help you guys out." And I was too stupid to realize what was going on. All I wanted to do was go home and like go to the bathroom and take a shower and go to sleep. and I think you and Tara were like, "Dude, she was totally hitting on you, man. You totally could have scored." And I'm like, "I don't care. I just want to go to sleep and go to the bathroom, or go to the bathroom, go to sleep." And then Jason put me in this room. It was surrounded by aquariums of those black emperor scorpions. They're like a foot long. They're giant. They're man-eating scorpions. And I couldn't sleep because I kept on thinking that there were scorpions crawling all over me.
I remember that.
That was crazy. That was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I slept on the floor at his place, and there was an aquarium right by my head of either spiders or something. But I was so tired at that point that I didn't care, and I just went to sleep. But I remember there were spiders.
Yeah, I remember those black scorpions also.
Yep.
Yeah, but for me, I was in the middle of the car breaking down, walking through the swamp, and going back to that walk I mentioned earlier about when I was walking into town through the swamp. I walked, it was like about, I don't know how long, it was like maybe 1.5, 2 miles one way, one road going into the town from the freeway. And I didn't feel comfortable walking on the road, so I was walking on the side, and occasionally I'd be stepping in swamp and water. I walked into town, rented a vehicle, came back to the hotel. And then the guy at the hotel, who was super cool, he was like, "Oh, you should have told me. I would have drove you in there." And he's like, "Just so you know, don't do that again because there's gators in that swamp." I was like, "Okay."
Like eaten by gators.
Yeah.
Oh my
Mike?
God.
I don't know.
Yeah. Never
That's
see.
Ugh.
But that was
such-
that tour was, I mean, Tara and I did a tour, 2 tours after that in '97, and those tours were a little better in regards to, the clubs and everything.
He was better organized.
But yeah, but just because times, had advanced, I think to a certain extent in '95, there was really no bands like Lycia that would do that kind of tour. When the bands from England would come over and do tours, it was a completely different thing. They were a big deal and they would be
They
taken
have
care of.
bands and stuff.
We were sort of touring like a indie punk band to a certain degree. And because of it, none of the clubs really were comfortable with maybe paying us. But when we did the tours in '97, we actually had a booking agent at that time, Bay Ridge Booking. Great booking agency that I have nothing but the highest to say about them. They booked a lot of metal bands, East Coast metal bands, and they took us as a client, and Ken Creedy was the guy that ran the place, super great guy. And I think the guy that was assigned to us was a guy named Ben DeWalt, who was one of the guys that was at the helped organize our show at Limelight on July 4th. And
Oh, nice.
he was a super good guy, and I think he was handling us and Switchblade Symphony and a few other bands. And so we got really good tour. We toured in '97 in the first leg. They booked us 27 shows and 30 nights across the country. And it was originally 29 out of 30, but we had a show in Birmingham, Alabama, and a show in Minneapolis canceled because of scheduling conflict. They were able to really just fill us in everywhere. And with the exception of just a couple little shows, they actually got us, for the time, decent pay. And so we were still touring like the three of us toured with no sound guy and everything. So every night was an adventure with the house sound guy. And there's plenty of stories of that. And I remember in Jacksonville, me telling the sound man, the sound guy came in and he was completely, he was high, or probably more strung out more than anything. And so I called the DJ over and I said, "Do you know how to run this volume knob?" And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You're the sound man tonight." And I told the sound guy to go home because he was so messed up. And we pulled into a club into Atlanta, and they're like, "Well, we had a problem last night. The roof caved in. So you're not going to play on the stage." It was the same club that you had played in Atlanta. So we set up on the floor, on the dance floor, and played. So it was always an adventure.
Yeah, but didn't your guitar, something happened to your guitar that night too, remember? And you had to use Ash's guitar?
No, that was
Or
on the tour that the three of us did together. And it wasn't a guitar. It was that my voice was gone because I had slept that was the last show after the Florida adventure. And I hadn't slept for quite a number of days, and I lost my voice. My voice was
Ash sang on a couple songs, right?
He sang one song, and to the people of Atlanta, I apologize. You paid to come see Lycia play, and you got an instrumental show. So, but I mean, hey.
I swear one of your effects units or somebody's effects unit or something died that night too.
I think Dave's. Your died.
Yep. We were, I thought it was in Columbus.
Could be.
And something like there was like some short and I heard a pop and I saw these sparks flying, and I went to turn on my rack, and everything was dead.
Well, just that's the story of the way our tours were back then. And you know, I really dig a lot of the new bands out here that are going on now, but they have it pretty good. We went and saw Soft Kill here in town.
Nice.
And this was a while ago, and they were playing some festival, so it wasn't like something that. Yeah, it was a burrito festival in downtown Phoenix. Actually, a pretty cool event. They had tons of bands playing, and they were headlining. And Soft Kill showed up just in the nick of time to play. But technology has improved so much now that the sound guys were walking around in the audience with a tablet and doing the sound, and they have all these plug-in effects, tons of feedback suppression, and these bands sing with like just washes of reverb. And you know, I don't know if you remember this, Dave, but we used to, when we lived in Ohio, I used to constantly go to all the music stores around, the Akron Music, Woodsies, and I was always like going up and talking to the technical people, like looking for equipment that I wanted. And they never had anything, and they were always saying, that's crazy. And what I was looking for is the equipment that's available now. I'm like, I need something that can control feedback so that we can do tons of reverb. And they're like, that's never going to happen. And
right.
I mean, we were just ahead of our time in regards to what we wanted to do. And now bands can go out and play it with these kind of effects. And it's frustrating to me because we still get lots of show offers, but I'm so damaged from the way it was before that I just can't trust when people say, oh, it will be good this time, because back in the 90s, everyone would always say, oh, don't worry, you go play the show, the sound will be great. And then you go there and it would be awful. And that go back to 2009, the show that Tara and I did here in Scottsdale. We were assured that the sound was going to be great. And this is exactly how it went. I started in sound check. I started walking to the microphone. I didn't even make a sound. And I got about 4 inches from the microphone, and the thing started feedbacking out of control. And I just looked at Tara and I said, fuck this. I'm not singing tonight. I was defeated literally 30 seconds into the sound check because of the way it was for us back in the 90s.
Oh my God. That's horrible.
So every time we get these completely awesome show offers, I'm like, and they're like, don't worry, it'll be great. I'm like, nope, you have great intentions, but it will be a disaster for me.
It'll be great for everyone but Lycia.
Yeah,
right.
It's really easy for you to say it's going to be okay, but I'm the one that's going to be standing on the stage with the feedback and everyone looking at me like, oh my God, what a joke.
Yeah.
And Dave, we're kind of to the point now where like we like doing these living room shows and just a guitar, no effects, no microphones, no nothing, because you can control that.
Yeah, it is. It's liberating. Yeah. It really is. Like these at-home shows, it's like, okay, we're just going to turn the phone on, hit record, and we're going to just play. And you don't have to worry about that your mouth is 3 inches from the microphone, that you have these cords hanging off. You're just playing the guitar and you're just singing. And if Lycia ever does any kind of show, that's the way I want to do it, in some small little intimate place where we're just sitting there and playing the acoustic guitars and just performing and just keeping it simple. You know, we're comfortable in the studio, but in terms of live, I'm much more comfortable that way.
Right.
And Dave, if that ever happens, you're more than welcome to come along and join us. Just grab your acoustic guitar and you can replicate your bass parts on that, and we'll just play and have a good time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's, you know, and that's when you talked about doing, there were some people that wanted to hear certain songs last year. I practiced them and I played them and I set up the cameras. I couldn't do it. And I probably will end up doing them because it's just that I want to have everything controlled and I want everything perfect. And I'm too much of a perfectionist to like want to, you know, I hear something that's like, oh, this is off, or this sounds strange. But yeah, no, I mean, I would love to do that. I think that'd be incredible. That'd be great.
We went for the last, we did that Goths for Sanctuary, which, first of all, let me say that was that was a really fun thing for us to do. It really changed my opinion. I think for years I sort of felt a little bit of resentment towards the goth community because I felt that they had expectations of me that I couldn't live up to.
Right.
Same story, different, whatever. But we did this, and it was just such a great experience, and it really changed my opinion about all of it. But when Tara and I were setting up to do it, we were going to say, okay, we're going to really make this more Lycia. We're going to use the effects. We're going to have the microphone, and we set up and we started doing it, and it was difficult. It was not sounding the way we wanted it. And finally, we just said, screw this, man. Let's just do it raw and acoustic. And it was the best thing we could have done because then what we were concentrating on was the performance and not the technical thing. And I think that right there in itself is where I feel I failed in the 90s in our live performances, that I concentrated more on trying to get the technical aspect right as opposed to actually performing. And I never want to go back and have that distraction again. I want to just think about playing and singing. And so I'm much more comfortable with the doing acoustic, truly acoustic performances, and then leaving the wall of sound effects for the studio, because that's both of our comfort zone for decades now.
Yep. I remember when you guys used to practice, when I had stopped doing live shows and you and Tara were practicing, I would sit there and watch you guys do your shows, and it was amazing. It was really, really good. And it's, it's probably exactly the same situation that you want to put yourself in current times as well, is just playing in a very controlled environment. And I think, and that's the problem with us, we want everything controlled.
Yeah.
And and that's the problem. We go back to like bands that have the skill set of playing live. We don't have that skill set. We want to have control. We want to have control over the feedback, and we want to have control over the every aspect of live sound. And when you guys were practicing, I would sit there and watch you guys, and it was perfect. You guys would nail every practice. We would do it like 2 hours of practicing, and I would watch you guys, and it'd be perfect. And then I remember you come back after a couple of shows, and you'd be like, "Oh, fuck, it would be terrible." That you'd have problems with feedback, and you have other extraneous random issues that would affect your performance. But oh man, it's just, it's weird because it's you want to sort of project like what you want to have, for your music, and then when you play live, like I said, it's a different skill set than what you are when you're recording in a bedroom.
It's interesting because that what you're talking about right there, those rehearsals,
mm-hmm.
I think those are the rehearsals that we went and did the Project Festival in 1996.
Right.
And that Project Festival in 1996 was one of the few shows that I think really went well for us, because I 100% controlled everything from the stage. I had a sub mixer on stage. I did all the mixing on stage. We had wired in-ear monitors. We had them turn all the monitors. We were playing a very large venue, the Vic Theater in Chicago, so we were able to be set far enough back behind the big speakers so that there was going to be no feedback. So the show went really well, but that show did not transcribe well into smaller clubs. And so we were able to pull off that big show, and it went really well. And in fact, if anyone wants to go and listen to compilation appearances, I think volume 2, you can hear Gray Clouds in the Morning Break So Cold and Gray from that performance. and the sound is about as good as Lycia Live got with vocals, but I did everything from the stage, and it was difficult. I mean, I was running the smoke machine, I was submixing, I was playing guitar, I was singing with a headset I was singing with like a headset microphone.
Yep.
And I literally felt like I was tied up with rope because I had a cord running to the headphones, a cord running to the microphone, a cord running to the guitar. I had the cords for the lights and the smoke machine in front of me. It was like I couldn't even move. I had to stand exactly in the same spot. And we pulled it off only because we did the practicing. Was it fun? Hell no. It was not fun at all because, Tara, you probably remember, even though we nailed that show, we drove out of Chicago saying, fuck this, fuck, we were like the Sex Pistols, fuck this, fuck that, fuck everything. I was so frustrated leaving there that even though we played one of the best shows of our career, I just felt so frustrated that I always use the example of like, I just want to be Jim Morrison, just roll me up to the damn show, say, there's the stage, go out and perform. I don't want to worry about whether or not the sound's right or whether the lights are right. Just let me perform. I want to just perform. I don't want to worry about all this other shit, but I had to. And we pulled it off. And then in 97, we went out on the tour. Tara probably remembers very well. I said, that was a situation that worked. So I hooked up everything. I got the headphones. And the first night I literally took the headphones and fuck this, fuck that, because it was feedback, you know? And it was like, okay, we did all this practicing and now it's all over. Done. So we're doing an instrumental set. Then we did the instrumental set, and then everybody like complained to Project like, this isn't what I booked. And I'm like, what the hell? You know, I'm working my ass off trying to do something good. And everyone is unhappy. Every place I go, it's like, you know, I really love Lycia, but yeah, it's like, okay, thanks, man.
So I think there's a lot of people that are actually wondering what happened to the Yuma boys.
Well,
I think they were at the Capitol a couple days ago.
And let me tell you what happened to the Yuma boys. Yeah, we don't want to go there because I mean, I think we're all kindred spirits, but we'll just not go there. The Yuma boys. You know, it's funny because on the Start Corner tour, I don't know, man. I had come out of this really dark period, and I was just in a rare situation where goofing around was fun, but you know, once we got to Ohio and I got really serious about music, and then, you know, I had health issues and my mom died unexpectedly, and it changed me. And I went from being a happy-go-lucky guy to being like really, you know, really a solemn, withdrawn person. You know, I've always been a aloof person, but Tara was there. She saw it. I mean, it was like I was a certain person, and all of a sudden I changed, and I never really went back to Yuma boy. But you were around there. It was sort of a goofy time. No. And for people, obviously, they're like, what the hell is Yuma boy? In the very early days of Lycia, I worked, I don't know why I did this, back to the being out of sync and making wrong decisions. I had a college degree, but for some reason I thought the best decision was to work a low-paying job at a rent-a-car company cleaning cars so I could be free to do my music, even though I didn't have a music career going. I worked with this guy. He was from the Yuma area, and he was a real backwoods hillbilly, and he had all these very bizarre mannerisms, just bizarre. And when we were on the Start Corner tour, we had this guy that came along with us, and he was a roadie. And we just started joking around. I don't know how it came up about this guy. And so we started acting like him. And it just became sort of like, we became sort of obsessive about it. and to the point where we were irritating the hell out of everybody else on the tour. I mean, we just never stopped. It was just nonstop. And it was like, I would just drink beer all the time and just act like this strange guy. And I'm sure it just irritated the shit out of you, Dave. And I know it irritated the hell out of Sam Rosenthal Project and
Right.
Susan Jennings, his girlfriend at the time, who was, working at Project at the time. And
Yeah.
Which
hey,
makes it even funnier.
I talked about this in a previous podcast, and you remember this, I'm sure. Remember when we did that in-store up in Berkeley, and we were sort of up in some kind of cage or something. Remember, people were coming up, and I told the story about how some girl came up and gave me some cards, and when she realized that this guy that was sitting across me, this really goth-looking guy, she thought that was me. When she looked at me and saw that I looked like some guy that was like some James Dean wannabe with my slick back hair, you could just see then that her love of Lycia went from 100% to 0%, literally, like right there. It was like, oh, that's what you look like? I don't like you anymore.
Right.
I feel like that.
And that's interesting. I think you remember at one point we were showing up. I don't know if it was a show or what it was, and I don't know, the vendor or something pointed out one of the roadies, like, "Oh, hey, you're Michael, you're Mike VanPortfleet." And he's like, "Nope, it's that guy over there." And it reminded me of back when Jason Farrell first met you, and he said, he was coming to he was going to visit you for the first time, and the way he described it was like, "Hey, I'm going to go." When he was going to talk to you at your apartment, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to look for some guy that looks like a now I forgot the name of the band." Freebird. Who's the band that does Freebird?
Skinner.
Yeah, Skinner. So he's like, "Hey, just look for the guy that looks like a Leonard Skinner fan, and that's going to be the guy that did Ionia."
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And,
go ahead.
oh, there was a time though in Chicago when the first Convergence, and we were all sitting together in a table with Sam and Pat, and I don't know if Susan was there or not, but we were sitting there, we're watching Beavis and Butthead, and we were just laughing and having a good time. And these two ultra goth girls came walking by, and they looked at us and they said, "Ugh, the mentality of some people."
I remember that.
Right. And we all laughed, and like even Sam was like, "Do they have any fucking idea who we are?" I'm like, they don't, because all they are doing is just making the fucking scene. They're just walking by and just like persecuting us for watching Beavis and Butthead. It was ridiculous.
Which was way more entertaining than the fashion show that was going on.
Right.
And that goes back to a lot of the frustrations I had over the years of being classified as something, because first and foremost, I'm not anti-goth.
Right.
I'm just a person that likes a lot of different things, and I don't want to be classified as something because I'm just what I am. But you would have really enjoyed what I had, this interesting little ploy that I did on the '97 tour, and Tara knows exactly where this is going. To start our set, I had this about a 6 or 7 minute long version of Dome from Australia that was distorted. It sounded very Bleak-like. Remember when me and you were going to do a second Bleak album?
Yep.
One of the pieces I recorded for that, and I used it as an intro for when we played. And what I used it for was I wanted to hear what it sounded like out of the PA. So I'd be on the side of the stage and I would start our sequence stuff, which we had on DAT tapes at the time, and I would start it up, and then I would literally walk out into the crowd and stand back by the soundboard, because it was like a 7 minute long song, and I could hear what it sounded like out of the speakers. And I would sometimes stand out there and just listen to it. And as I was walking through the crowd, the looks I would get from people because I didn't look goth. I just looked like what I look right here, but
you
I
had
don't know.
long hair and a beard
I had
and
long beard and a like a scruff. And I would be standing there and these people would be looking at me like, you're clueless, man. We're here to see Lycia, and what are you doing here? And I would be walking around the crowd, and then literally I would walk right up to where the security guy was standing next to the stage, and the guy would step back. I'd step on stage, I'd put my guitar and walk right in front of those people. And the look on their faces was worth everything, because it was like,
Right.
okay, you were just ripping on me, and now
Yep.
you're watching me.
Yep.
And I hate, if there's one thing that I really hate, is classifications in music. I like all kinds of music. I love a lot of goth music.
Right.
It was a big influence on me.
Mhm.
But I also like prog rock. I like
Yep.
psychedelic music. I like Led Zeppelin.
Yep.
I love electronic music. I love ambient music. You know, I am a music fan. I like all kinds of stuff, and I hate being pigeonholed as just one thing. And I think one thing in Lycia that I've been really proud of is the fact that we always bring in our other influences.
Absolutely. Speaking of, what have you guys been listening to? Like just recently, like if you can name a couple of bands that you've been listening to.
Go, Tara, you go first. You're probably
I don't listen to a ton of music that much. I usually try to listen to like podcasts or stuff like that while I'm working, because I find it takes the time, makes the time go faster. But I've been listening to the same stuff I always listen to. I've been listening to Godflesh again, and Swans, and who's I listened to the other day? What's her name? Not Chelsea Wolf. Well, I listened to Chelsea Wolf too, but
Emma Rundle.
Yeah, Emma Ruth Rundle.
Yes.
Just the same kind of stuff
Yeah.
as ever, you know. But I don't listen to music a ton.
Right.
I'm in the same category. I don't listen to a lot of stuff, but you know, I have an appreciation for a lot of stuff. But recently, what I've been listening to is Peter Newton from Clan of Zymox just recently made available the early demos of Clan of Zymox from the first two albums, which are my favorite two Clan of Zymox albums. And so he made them available via his social media account, and so it's not like an official release. He just got these old demos together, and it's absolutely fascinating listening to early versions and alternate versions of the songs from their first album and from Medusa. And so the last couple of weeks I've been listening to those while I've been working at my job, and very fascinating because, you know, hearing, you know, skeletal or raw versions of songs that I've loved for so long, it's quite interesting. But you know, a few years back I was listening to a lot of different stuff, but yeah, I haven't connected to anything in the last year, I think, but I'm sure there's lots of good stuff out there. But well, how about yourself?
Actually, let's see, Chelsea Wolf, Dax Riggs from Acid Bath. Even though he hasn't he hasn't released anything in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. I listened to that. Believe it or not, this is ridiculous, but a group called the Sleaford Mods, which is almost like rap, which is strange. It's English. Let's see, what else? I had a whole list of people that I've been listening to. Daughters. Daughters is amazing.
Yeah, I like it.
Nice. Trying to remember. Yeah, I can't come up with anything else right now at the moment. But yeah, it's mostly YouTube stuff. Just, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff, like you kind of end up going down a rabbit hole where you click, you specifically look for one video, And then
Yep.
you see stuff over on the side. I'm like, ooh, that looks interesting. And then you end up just finding all this stuff. And I have a memory. So I'll find this band and I'll be like, oh my God, that was so amazing. And then I can't remember who they were. And
Right.
Well, the last couple days, that Soft Moon stuff you've been sharing with me is just
actually,
rocks.
that's his solo. That's his solo stuff.
Oh yeah, that stuff that's powerful stuff, man. I really dug it a lot.
I think I'm gonna get that album.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, it was just just the way he processes the synths are rock solid.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much good music. I think maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago, the scene just really blossomed into being a really cool thing with all these different genres sort of mixing and matching, and the lines were blurred, and I really enjoyed that. But I think with COVID and everything, it threw everybody off. And with the way that society is right now, it's so distracting. And sometimes I just want quiet. I want peace of mind. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to go to sleep and
Right.
hope that everything doesn't crumble.
It was interesting back in the 90s, when internet started really taking hold of everything. You were saying that and the internet will actually end up being the great equalizer. And I remember you specifically saying that because it was like a kid in his room could write a song and have worldwide distribution, whereas we were just pretty much regulated to finding some label that could get us and take us and try and promote us. But now finally with the internet, we breaking through that, those borders, those restrictions.
That's one thing that I don't think that young bands can ever really appreciate. I think it back. I mean, I'm an old guy. I started playing in 1981, and I spent a good couple, my first 6, 7 years in music, just trying to get someone in my local area to just listen to what I was doing. And if you could just get a local fanzine, by fanzine I mean somebody that would handwrite something, Xerox it, staple it together, and put it up at the indie record store. If you could get someone from that to actually just acknowledge that you even existed, felt like a great victory. And I didn't even get that. The idea of having a record out when I was playing in bands in 1983 seemed like impossible, because you can even get, at least from the vantage point I was at, I didn't know of any indies. All my favorite bands were on major labels, all the English post-punk bands. And so I had no idea how to get my music to even get 2 or 3 people to hear it, let alone have it exposed. And now someone could say, I'm going to play music. I think I want to be in a band. They can go out and buy software, and literally 2 months from now, they could have something up on digital platforms across in Bandcamp, and they would be perceived as equals to people that actually paid their dues. And I really have a problem with that, because I think it's still important to be a musician. I don't think I think there's a lot of people out there that have success now that aren't musicians, and they don't know how to play an instrument.
Right.
And I don't think that's right. You're a very talented musician. That's one of the reasons I was drawn to have you come in the band. And I work really hard to try to be a good musician. And it's important. It's important. I always remember something when I was in college and I took an art history class, and, someone like Picasso can get by with doing abstract art because he is an artist and he has proven himself as an artist. And so if you're an artist and you have the skill set to be an artist and then you become experimental, then yeah, you're an artist. But if you just start out with the abstract and you can't do the other stuff, then you're just, is that an artist? Is that really an artist? Or is it just somebody that says, I want to be an artist, so I don't need the skill set to do this. I'm just going to, you know what I mean?
Throw
Yeah.
paint on canvas.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of musicians out there that have success, but they're technicians. They're not musicians.
Right.
And if you can't go into a room with a real instrument and do something, that I don't know. I don't know what I think of. I don't think of it. You know, maybe you make something that sounds cool and everything, but you sort of have to understand music. I mean, maybe I've just become that grumpy old guy of like, don't stand in my yard. But
Right.
Well, that's definitely happened. But
yeah, that definitely has happened. Well, I guess so.
I'm going to take an intermission really quick. I'm going to run to the bathroom really quick. I'll be right back.
All right.
Thanks. We're back.
We're back.
We're back from that commercial break.
Who is our sponsors, by the way?
Our sponsor was, well, I shouldn't say this, but if you want to, I mean, I'm just putting this out here. I did this a couple weeks ago, but Santan Moon Juice. If you want to do if you really want to do a endorsement deal, I would be totally into this because I consume quite a bit of this, and it's probably my favorite IPA. I really love this IPA. It's really a very hoppy IPA, and it's good stuff.
Nice.
Free advertisement for Santan.
Everyone else on YouTube seems to be sponsored by adamandeve.com, but I won't go into the details on that.
Well, I'm totally game to either Santan, Four Peaks, or Founders. I like all your IPAs, so maybe if you want to, man, I'll be more than happy to push your product and consume your product.
Dave, what do you want?
Hi, Dirk. I want to be sponsored by Quinoa or Kiwana. They make a really good beer called Widowmaker. It's really good. Oh, so good. Hi, Dirk.
So, what kind of beer is your preference? I used to be a lost soul that used to drink a typical American bland beer, and then Tara started buying me some of these interesting IPAs, and initially I didn't like IPAs. I thought the flavor was just too much. But after some point, it just clicked with me, and now I'm just a massive IPA fan. I drink a lot of different varieties, and I think this is my favorite, the Santan Moon Juice. It's really a very tasty adult beverage.
Nice. During the 2000s, I spent a lot of time drinking the cheapest, most ridiculous beer I could ever find, and that was Natty Ice.
Oh, I don't even drink beer, and I know that can't be right.
It was horrible, but it was cheap. And
I know you like Foster's, though. I remember you liked Foster's.
Yeah, you drank Foster's when we were in Ohio.
That's right.
Back in the late 80s, when John Fair and I were just getting Lycia going, we were consuming massive amounts of Milwaukee's Best because it was like the cheapest beer. And I remember we were so excited when we went to the Sun Club and they had Milwaukee's Best on tap.
Oh.
But that stuff, I'm sure I would be like, I don't want that.
So,
but man, we can lots of that.
I remember we would get together at your house, at the house you were renting with Jason, and there was a couple other people, and me and you would sit there and we'd listen to like Swans, and we'd sit there and we would drink, or we'd go in the there was an alley that we'd take to like a 7-Eleven or a Circle K. And we'd buy, and we'd sit there and we spent and that's during the time when we recorded the Burning Circle, that we'd sit there outside in the backyard, just sitting on chairs and just talking about philosophy and all sorts of things. That was good times.
Yeah. I had a lot of great talks with Matt from Half String out there. We would sit out in the backyard and drink beer and just talk about, music and life. Yeah, well, we don't need to talk about that.
The peach tree.
Hey, man, it is what it
is. There was a time when we all went out to Lake Erie, and we stopped at Subway, and we had lunch at Subway, and then we went to Lake Erie, and you and Tara were swimming. And I had to run to the bathroom really quick, and I ran to the bathroom, and it was a mile away, and I got there and every stall didn't have a door, so the last stall had a door, and I opened it up and I ran in there, and there was no toilet paper, and I ran to another stall, grabbed toilet paper, and I took it to the one that had the door. And finally, when I got settled, I realized that surrounding me were these webs and spiders, and they were just hanging above me, and they're walking around, and these giant spiders. And so after I finished, I walked back out, and we were driving back home that day, and Mike was like, "Just do what I do, just swim backwards."
I don't remember that. Hey, man, it's Lake Erie.
Right.
It's probably improving the water quality.
At least it's not flammable.
That's right. There's a nuclear facility right down the street.
There was. Yeah. That's hilarious. Hey, we were telling Dirk the story the other day about, two stories.
Right.
One is that you had been eating a bunch of chicken wings. And then, you were eating all these chicken wings. And then we were like, what is he doing? You were tossing this stuff off the balcony. And we're like, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm throwing them down there for the deer. We're like, dude, deers aren't going to eat chicken wings. What are you doing? And then the other story was that, do you remember when our toilet was completely clogged up?
No.
Well, the toilet was incapacitated, but Mike had fixed it, and you did not know that he had fixed it.
Okay.
And so I'm laying it there in bed with the windows open because it was nice or whatever. We hear this noise, and we're like, "What's going on?" You had gone out onto the balcony and were peeing off the balcony onto the guy's grill in the balcony below us, and we were just like, "Oh man!"
That's the sound we heard. We could hear it hitting the grill.
Yeah.
But that guy, first of all, that guy was a complete jerk. So, man, I hope you enjoyed the hamburger.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember that actually. That's funny. Because I remember peeing on his grill in the middle of the winter.
Yeah.
Well, he grilled all winter too, but he was a loud guy, man.
Yeah.
And he was a real dick. I remember he was a real dick. So,
yep.
Hey, man, you make your bed, you sleep in it. You're dick to us. Enjoy your piss-soaked hamburger, dude.
And he's recorded in history as you finished the vocals for the one song, and I remember it, he was banging on the ceiling.
It was Polaris.
Yeah.
Poor guy. He probably was cooking his chicken on urine soaked, charcoal.
Don't worry, he probably got arrested in the riot.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Anyways, to move away from that, during our commercial break, Tara and I were talking about how maybe we should discuss potential future plans. I mean, we were talking at the initial thing about maybe doing a song.
Yeah.
And I think we've over the last 4 or 5, 6 years, Lycia, I think, has really moved beyond what people thought we would do. I think on A Line That Connects, we really started doing a lot of variants.
Right.
And I really dug that. I really liked the fact that we were, doing a lot of different things, and we really took it to the extreme in flickers. And so I'm really game to expand. Like, you've heard some of the stuff that that Tara and I have worked on recently, and you know that we really crossed into some new styles. I did one song that my guitar playing approach completely changed, and it almost sounds a little jazzy, and another one is almost flamenco.
Right.
And I just finished a remake of an old song with John Fair that is another almost synth pop type of thing, a moody synth pop thing. And I know Tara is just she loves heavy Swan style music, and I know you were a fan of that too. And so, I'm thinking if we do a split single, maybe we move in a direction where we do stuff like that, because I would find that to be intriguing. I mean, it's more of a musical style that you both guys listen to, but I've explored it briefly when I worked with Will Welsh, and we explored it. I think when I think of a song like "Illuminate," which on A Line That Connects, which is a song that
Yep.
I gave you synth parts, and you brought back sort of this kick in the gut, heavy bass. It really added this just really primal punch. And I think also a song like "Rewrite" in Flickers.
Right.
I really dig exploring that heavier style too.
Absolutely.
I know you like that stuff too. I think that'd be an interesting area to maybe explore.
You were the person that really introduced me to Swans in their filth period.
Yeah.
Because what I knew was like Love of Life, which was obviously like 360 degrees. It was completely opposite of what they were doing with filth. And but yeah, I'd be totally down for doing that, because it allows, I think, the freedom to sort of explore those darker, heavier, noisier aspects of what you have done in previous years.
I like the variety of styles, and I like the heavy stuff. I think there's this perception that Lycia was something based on just a particular time frame of the Ionia time frame, where I just happened to be doing something a particular way at that time. That is just that time.
Right.
There's a lot of different stuff, and I get bored quickly, and that's why, even though there's this perception that there's a Lycia sound, I always challenge people. Well, what is that Lycia sound? We have the Boiler Room on the Bleak album. Then there's the acoustic stuff that Tara and I did. There's ambient stuff. There's, a song like Pray. How does Pray fit with the Boiler Room? Pray is almost like a shoegaze pop song, almost. How does that fit with a song like Desert? Or the electronic synth stuff. I just read a story about Throbbing Gristle that was on Bandcamp Daily. I read it yesterday, and they were talking about how, they never felt comfortable being perceived as something. And, I've never been comfortable. I like music, a wide variety of music, and I like exploring stuff. And just because, there's ambient songs here and there doesn't mean that I don't like a big heavy song. In the 70s, all I listened to was hard rock and heavy stuff. That's all I listened to, that and art rock. I didn't, listen to gentle music. I liked heavy things. when I first started playing in bands in 1981, it was the end of the new wave era.
Mhm.
I had a lot of arguments with people that I played in bands with that were saying, turn off those foot pedals. But to me, I thought, I got to play with a distortion pedal, which was completely
Mhm.
unfashionable at the time. Because of my hard rock, my hard rock past as a kid. You
Right.
know, I listened to stuff like Sweet, Ballroom Blitz was, my first concert was Sweet in 1976.
Wow.
And I, the same time I was really into Sex Pistols and the Ramones and Patti Smith and stuff like that, I listened to Judas Priest. And I
Right.
also listened to Yes at the same time.
Yeah.
I also listened to, you know, that soul style Jefferson Starship of Marty Bauman.
Mhm.
Good music is good music. I don't care. I don't care.
I just think
Absolutely.
it's funny because people have this perception. Like, I have people that send me music all the time, and it'll always be some like ethereal girl singer. You know, I think because we were on Project, people assume that's the kind of music that I listen to, and I have like, I think that it's pretty or whatever, but it doesn't really do anything for me, and like I would rather listen to like Nicki Minaj and Godflesh or whatever. Like to me, like I don't know, I just like really heavy, nasty, dirgy stuff, you know what I mean? And so it's funny
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
perception that people have of you, like the whole thing we were talking about earlier about being pigeonholed, like
Mhm.
people expect you, and I do like a lot of the classics, Bauhaus, The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, all that stuff. But
Right.
by the same token, it's like that standard goth sound. Like I can't name two Sisters of Mercy songs. I don't know anything about Christian Death, and it's nothing against that music. It's just not my
Yeah.
knowledge, I guess.
And to me, it's just part of the big picture.
Like,
I love First, Last, and Always. I listen to that album over and over and over and over. I love that album, but I like other stuff too. And
Right.
I remember back in the 80s, there were times where there were things that you like and you don't, that you felt like you could say you like and you didn't like because you're young and you're trying to be cool.
right.
But right around the time that Lycia started really blossoming, that's when I just sort of like let the guard down and, you like what you like. This is funny because when I was working on Rewrite, Tara remembers this. I always said, this reminds me, I don't know what it is about this, but it reminds me of Led Zeppelin. Just the end
Yeah.
part. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just something about it that reminds me of it.
Right.
And I thought that was a good thing.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are like, that's old. That's old. Yeah, you know what? I challenge a lot of guitarists to say, listen to Jimmy Page's guitar. He's a very inventive guitar player. And
Yep.
I can't stand when guitar players just play standard major chords,
Right.
play minors, play sevenths, play
Yep.
diminished. That's what makes music interesting.
Well, you when we were doing the Burning Circle, you had a couple of alternate tunings, didn't you?
Yeah, the Burning Circle is an alternate tuning that I had forgotten about, but a couple years ago I bought Dirk, my son Dirk, an acoustic guitar. It's what sort of got me back into playing nylon string classical guitars. I bought him one.
Nice.
And now I have that guitar in that alternate tuning. It took me the longest time to remember what the alternate tuning was because I never wrote any notes down
Right.
in regards to that. So I had to just mess around until I figured it out. But I've actually been practicing that song.
Oh,
Not
nice.
recently, but maybe about 3-4 months ago, and because I have that guitar alternate tune, and
Yeah.
someday I might do that in one of the live things. But that song I really dig a lot, with the alternate tuning. But that's the only song I've ever recorded with the alternate tuning.
It was a beautiful song. It was a beautiful song. I remember after you had we recorded your initial tracks, your acoustic tracks, and your vocals, and I went back and I did the I wanted to create sort of a slide guitar instead of the change between the verse and the chorus. And I was just like, man, this is just amazing, amazing song. And I remember you told me that you had no idea what the alternate tuning actually was, because you had tuned it, you did the song, and we recorded without a click track, which was really odd. We normally did everything with a click track, but for whatever reason, we wanted to make it more natural. And you did the song live in that little tool room. And I had to go back and try to do the drums. And even now, when you listen to the CD, you can hear that it's sort of kind of not quite on. And I remember it bothered you when you listened to that song. You were kind of like, the rhythm isn't quite on, tempo, and you never felt really good about the actual recorded version of that. But if I had the original tracks, I mean, of course, now with what we have available now, it'd be easy to take that and reprocess everything into something more modern.
I think what you did with that was really amazing, though, because I think when I wrote the song, I was very heavily influenced by Daniel Ash's acoustic stuff in Bauhaus, and like Slice of Life and stuff like that. And it really influenced a lot of my writing. You hear a song like The Ruins or The Ghost Ascends from a Line that Connects. It's completely influenced by his playing. And that song too was influenced by his playing. But what you did to the song was it brought in another big influence to me from my interest in prog rock, which was when I came in and heard what you did, I was like, oh my God, this is Pink Floyd.
Yes.
And I love Pink Floyd also.
Right.
And
right.
So to me, the fact that song is like this sort of epic Pink Floyd song on this album.
That's right.
And I can only hope that maybe people that listen to that album just don't boil it down to candles and bats. Because it really is, I think a song like that really draws on, maybe a lot of both of our earlier influence. I remember when I first met you, and you were also really into Prince at the time, and a lot of people might not think that was cool at that time, but I thought I like the fact that you're into a variety of things. I remember Jason Sparrow had released a compilation cassette called Meteorite, and he called a meeting, and that's when me and you first met.
That's right.
And me and you were talking about music at the time, and we were sort of out there on our own, talking about stuff that was we'll just be honest here. There was a certain, I don't like going there, but I'm just going to go there anyways. And I said this there's a certain arrogance with that shoegaze scene. We know what's cool and we know what's not cool. Yeah. Whereas me and you were sort of the odd guys out saying, well, yeah, that stuff's cool, but this stuff's cool too.
Right.
And I think that's what led us to working together, is that we're like, well, yeah, we dig all that stuff too, but we also like this, and we want to do this. We want to expand this. We want to make it bigger, and we want to bring in stuff that maybe people don't think is cool, but good music is good music, and I don't care what it is. If it's good music, it's good music. And I don't care if it's not wearing the right uniform. And I think, I hate saying this because I really genuinely like all these people, but a lot of times I just really felt that we didn't fit the cool factor to them.
You're absolutely right. And it's interesting. That's exactly when we met. It was a party that was celebrating the release of the compilation Meliorate tape.
Yeah.
And me and you sat there and you were talking about, and I remember specifically you were talking about using reverb and delay to sort of, in a way, to sort of control the way the song is structured. And we sat there and talked for, I don't know, probably an hour or so about it. And you were absolutely right. And it was interesting. That was the first time I ever met you. We sat there and talked about it, which is funny because previous to that, Ionia was released and I had the CD because I couldn't make, I think Jason had a release party at Stinkweeds for your Ionia release. And I got the CD. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was like, hey man, maybe I can come up with some keyboard parts. And I remember me and Jason were like, how do we, because we were doing our own thing and we were imitating our influences. And we're like, maybe we can practice your songs. And I remember practicing a lot of songs in Ionia. And like, maybe we can somehow get you to hire us as like backup musicians.
I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, I know. I never told you that. So I practiced like several songs of the Ionia album, and sort of in the idea that maybe we could talk Mike into hiring us to do live, to play live, and we could do the, yeah.
I would have.
So yeah, that's how. And I remember practicing Ionia several times, several of the songs, and playing them, coming up with, and then I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, finally Jason suggested you to work with me and to do live shows.
Yeah.
How funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It really is.
And then I remember when when Tara came out to Arizona for the first time, and then we came into to the studio and recorded. We did those 2 songs. Was it Surrender and Zine?
No, it was Surrender and Nimble.
Yeah.
Nimble. Okay.
And Nimble was sort of like an alternate version of Resigned.
Nice.
Which me and you had already done.
Yep.
Yeah, that was interesting. I think disc 2 of the Burning Circle, I don't know. I have mixed feelings of it because I talked about this in an earlier podcast. I think that while I felt you were a kindred spirit, there was a bit of growing pains at times. I think there's periods on Bleak and periods on disc 2 of the Burning Circle where you can sort of feel where we're still trying to find a way to meld our sound together. And I think it was really just a lead into what was going to become with Cold, where, Cold amazes me because there are songs that you almost did 100%, like a song like Colder, which is one of my favorite Lycia songs of all time. And then there's songs that I pretty much initiated and did a lot, like a song like Baltica. But somehow, some way, it sounds like one person wrote all those songs.
Right.
And maybe because of how Cold melded so well together is the reason why I look back at Vain and just 2 of the Burning Circle is like not being 100. It's like 95% there, but Cold was 100% there. But because it's not 100% there, I'm like, oh, if only we could have just melded just a little bit more. If I could have become a little bit more this way and you could have come a little bit more this way. And that's what Cold was, where, I mean, there was a lot of tension in the house when we did Cold, but man, musically, that is a connected album of people that had worked together for a few years and had played a lot of shows and had recorded a lot together because, I mean, there was a lot of distractions there, not only attention in the house, but that's shortly after I found out I had diabetes and financially you were struggling and we were on the verge of struggling and we didn't know what the future held. it went from being like we were talking earlier about a year earlier, where it seemed like the future seemed massive, to suddenly it for the first time it felt like it was going to collapse back in on itself, and we were all afraid like that we were going to lose what we had.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And you're absolutely right. I remember even when I told you, I'm like, I don't want to do any more live shows.
Yeah.
And you having to figure out how you and Tara were going to be able to, deal with doing live shows. But it was crazy.
Yeah, we just reverted back to the way me and you did the Start Corner tour. I mean, we made a nearly horrible decision with adding somebody who is a complete psychopath. Which I
don't say his name.
What? What's that?
Don't say his name.
I will not say his name, but it is what it is.
Right.
And it obviously was not even remotely close to working. And thankfully, musician friend, was out there.
By the way, that was not Jay.
It was not Jay. Jay is
fantastic.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, and it wasn't Phil.
He's still a great guy.
Yeah.
He was always a great guy, and that's why we brought him along for the last couple Lycia shows to play keyboard for us. He's a super cool dude. But anyways, Tara and I reverted to the process that me and you did on the Start Corner tour, which is taking the electronics. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're using a DAT tape? Oh my gosh!" But the thing is that we never used the DAT tape for anything that couldn't be sequenced.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You
no
said,
vocals, no guitar.
Yeah, no vocals or guitars or bass. Anything that could be played, you don't do it. Just the sequence stuff. And as a way, because we were limited financially, you can't bring a bunch of sequencers, and you can't buy like 3 versions of the same rack mount effects. Right. You have to like use the same effect multiple times on different things. And so the DAT tape made logical sense. And so Tara and I reverted to that when you decided you weren't tour. And I was frustrated at the time because I felt that tour, the tour we did that summer was building on something, and that the next tour was a pretty massive tour. It was a short tour, but with Typo Negative and the Misfits and stuff. Yep. But I mean, hey man, everyone is what they are. And once you decided you weren't going to do it, I was like, okay, well, that's his decision. And so we moved on and we found a way to make it work. And it wasn't as together as maybe our summer tour, but we pulled it off. Sam from Project came along and did our sound, and really that was a great help to us because he knew our sound, and he's not a shy guy. He'd go into these big rock and roll clubs with like professional sound people, and he'd go right up to the board and say, "I'm taking over," and he would take over, and lo and behold, we wouldn't have any feedback. And we played some big shows on that tour. We played Roseland Ballroom on Halloween with Typo Negative and the Misfits.
That's crazy.
And the sound was great. Was great.
Yep.
Thank you, Sam, for giving us the best sound on the biggest show Lycia ever played.
Yeah, I remember how beautiful the guitar sounded.
It was. Dave, you really should have been there, dude, because it was. You remember going to concerts here in Arizona?
Yeah. Yep.
At the Arizona Coliseum where the Suns used to play.
Yes.
It was like that. We got to the stage. It was a concert side stage at a major concert venue. There was union staff on the stage. I started setting my equipment. I remember this woman came out to me. She's like, "Nope, not allowed. It's against union rules. You go over there. I set up your equipment." We had a dress room with our name on it.
Our Ricky's equipment.
It was the most bizarre thing. This was a rough tour for us, but that show went really well. We walked out of the show afterwards.
Boston was good.
But we walked out of that show. We didn't. As soon as we were done, we went back to the hotel. So we walked outside. Our car our Geostorm, was
Yes.
parked right by the loading zone. We walked out, and as we were loading the car and we were getting ready to pull out, some guy came up to us, offering to sell us tickets to the show, to the Scalper. He's like, the biggest show in New York City tonight. You want to go in? I just held up my backstage pass, and he wanted to buy it from me.
Oh my God.
He was going to try to sell it. But that right there was probably the one time when we left there that I thought,
yeah,
we were going to take that next step, because it was everything that we had all worked for all those years.
right.
That night, New York City Halloween, we played in front of like what? I don't know how many people were there. I'm blurry, but I would say there were probably 5,000 people there. Maybe there was more, maybe there was less, maybe there was a lot more, maybe.
It was
I
bigger
don't think
than we played before.
I don't think there was a lot less, but there was a lot of people. It was Roseland Ballroom. It's a famous venue. It was sold out.
Yeah.
And to play in a venue like that, and to finish your set, and you hear a crowd erupt like it was like Cheap Trick live at Budokan. I mean, literally, I'm just serious here. It almost brought tears to my eyes, because this was 1995, and I started music in 1981. You talk about paying your dues.
Yep.
Started in 81, and I didn't have a full-scale release until 1991, 10 years later. Most people would have quit.
Yeah.
Walked away, and I just felt, I didn't have anything else. So I just kept.
The days leading up to that show had been so hard too.
Very hard. But
it was cool.
What the hell was that?
What was that?
What?
Is that Sasquatch?
What?
Is there a Sasquatch loose in northern Michigan?
What happened? What did I miss? What did I miss?
I'll just say this. I heard it. I just heard it. It was not me.
Whatever it wasn't me either then, because I don't know what you're talking about.
It sounded like an airplane.
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right.
Do you ever see Sasquatch up there in the woods by any chance?
I'm sorry. What was that?
Standing out there.
Do you ever see any Sasquatch or anything creepy up there in the woods?
Actually, I did. One day I looked out the front door, and I think it was probably a coyote that had rabies walking towards our house. And you don't expect that to happen.
Right.
I was like, well, that's really weird. That's really this strange looking dog that looks like it's going to kill everybody.
Yeah.
Chupacabra.
Chupacabra.
I have about 12 acres, and you have to keep an eye out. You have no idea. One day we'll have 25 wild turkeys walking through our yard, and then one day there'll be a little baby like fawn in the dog yard, and the dogs want to go out and kill it. Essentially, it's crazy.
That's cool.
I mean, what kind of culture shock was that for you? Because you're from Tempe,
right?
I mean, we live out here in what I call Superstition, Arizona, and we literally have what I call a yorch, which is part yard, part porch. And you have what you said, 12 acres?
Yes, sir. Yeah, 12 acres.
12 acres.
And it's like 2 of it is open for the dogs. That's fenced in. The rest is wooded, and there's hills.
Oh my gosh.
And it's interesting. I remember one night that I was standing outside, and I walked out there, and you can hear the coyotes. They start to yip.
Yeah.
And they sound like they're 5 feet from you.
Yeah.
And you start to get a little bit, you know, I mean, you get a little bit weirded out, you know, you're like, oh, I better go inside because these things are going to attack me. It's really strange, you know, because that's true. Like what Mike said, it's like I lived 30 years inside of Tempe, Arizona. And now all of a sudden I have wild turkeys, I have coyotes, wolves,
I love it.
snakes.
Yeah.
And
It's
for
awesome.
everybody out there, Tempe, you know, Tempe is suburban. It's palm trees, swimming pools.
Movie star.
Every yard is somewhat small, fenced in. It's not 12 acres in northern Upper Peninsula, Michigan, northern Wisconsin. I envy that you know, Tara and I both feel quite a bit trapped by the fact that, you know, we established our life, we bought someplace, you know, we live in our house like everyone else, we have jobs, and you have to make the decision what you do with your life. But, you know, you're in an area, and we're envious of that, you know. I mean, we're in the city, and it would be nice just to be out in the middle of nowhere, you know, just in a smaller town with all that wide open spaces and far in the north and that kind of climate and stuff. Summers here are unbearable.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how bad Arizona's summer is.
It's just,
air quality here is so bad now you can't freaking breathe.
It's bad air quality. Last year was the first year without a monsoon that I ever remember since '78. No monsoon, and it was hot, and it just lasted. We still had days in the mid 90s in November, and you know, it's just not. We don't. I mean, we love our house, we love our part of town, but there are aspects that we just wish we could get the hell out of here. But I mean, you pick your place and you just ride it out, man.
Yeah, that's true. I had no idea that. I think we had talked, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, and you had said that, like, oh, the UP is somewhere that you had wanted to live at one point. And to be honest, I had no idea that the UP was even a part of the United States. I thought it was Canada.
It feels like Canada at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, you know. It's there's a lot of things that I've had to learn how to take care of. You know, coming like a city boy going out in the middle of the UP and say, okay, well, now you have 16 inches of snow. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with, you know, skunks showing up and tearing apart your garbage in the middle of the night? Or your dogs coming in.
Chicken bones.
Right. Or we I don't know, 3 or 4 times we've let our dogs out and they come in and smell like skunk because they want to attack the skunk. You know, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I grew up in the city.
In the desert.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's crazy. And it's interesting because I remember when we all went out to Mike's father's house in Michigan, you know, and it was such a good time. We got in a pontoon boat and we you know, went out in the lake or something like that. And I had no idea there was that part of Mike's life, you know, and it sort of all sort of culminated together, and then sort of understood what he was coming from his perspective. And then seeing what Tara, you know, what your perspective from Ohio was. And it was really interesting how we all sort of like combine that together in our music.
I thought it was really cool that, you know, moving to Kent, you know, in the late '70s, I was totally I always listened to adventurous music my whole life. And so in the mid '70s, I started becoming aware of new music. And in the late '70s, becoming aware of like all this Ohio music. And when we first went to Kent, just knowing that was, you know, all those bands, the biggest being Devo, or from in and around there, it just felt like I was stepping into like musical history, and I was insanely shocked when I got there that the people that lived there were completely unaware of what went on there, you know, just a number of years earlier.
Yeah, just a few years prior.
I mean, Tara, you remember we would talk to people and nobody knew that all those influential bands were playing in Kent. You know, Devo played their first show in Kent.
Yep.
Right.
You know, but for me as a music fan, everything that I looked around when I lived there, I was always looking around from the vantage point of like, wow, this right here is the birthplace of American new wave music. And I was living there.
Yep.
And I never actually lived in Kent. We lived in Streetsboro, but Dave, you lived in Kent for quite a number of years down there off by Stowe Kent, didn't you?
True. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. No, I have pictures of actually when we drove up, and Tara's actually standing outside our house, like waving to us as we were pulling in. And it was pretty amazing. You're absolutely right. I lived in Stowe Kent in the 2000s when I was working on my first 3 albums.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the musical history behind that sort of area, that part of town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just watched a couple of days ago. I'm constantly watching music documentaries, and I was wanting to watch the PIL documentary, which Tara and I eventually watched. But her and Dirk were in the other room, so I recommended Devo, and it was just a collection of their videos, and that they had their first video, which I think was Secret Agent Man.
Yeah.
And that was actually filmed at JB's Down Under, which is in Kent, which we all drove by numerous times. And we first moved up there, the band that was the massive band at the time in Kent was a band called Dink, which actually was Beavis and Butthead.
Yep.
And they played down there a lot. And just driving up and down that street probably 1,000 times, because we lived up there for 6 years, and we constantly down there.
Yeah.
Knowing that that's where Devo was from, and knowing that, that was a center part of their life, and it was an influence on their music. And then I would be there, and I would see, you see like cool college kids, but you also would see Portage County. I mean, we all know what that means. And you're like, how did this happen here? I mean, what?
People were bred from that. That's how that happened. It's a rebellion against that.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense to me now. And it's bizarre that this whole worldwide music movement had a lot to do with what was going on there in this culture shock.
Absolutely.
I liked my time in Ohio, but we were very secluded, and we lived our musician life up in Streetsboro and in our apartment looking out at the woods. Me and Tara were just talking the other day. We often wondered if we got an apartment facing the other way, we probably would not have the same memories.
Right.
We looked straight out into what appeared to be pure nature. Which influenced. I mean, I remember very well. I just found out I had diabetes. The backwoods doctors there basically told me I was going to die, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm working on these songs, and we're having that massive winter of '95. There's like snow everywhere, and I'm sitting there looking outside. I'm sick as a dog, and I writing Baltica and snow. And seeing that snow just coming down outside, and I think I was looking the other direction, and I was looking at the guy working on his car in the parking lot. Might have a whole different vibe, but instead I'm looking out what appears to be looking out and pure nature. I mean, that view's gone.
See every day.
What's that?
We were looking at what Dave gets to see now every day.
Yeah, basically. And the thing about it is that's gone now. Just like everything. Like Dave, you wouldn't recognize Tempe if you came back. It's a completely different world.
I've gone through like Google Earth and gone through Tempe, and you're absolutely right. It's completely changed, and it's really depressing to see like the place that you grew up as a kid. As you look at it right now, and you feel like a complete stranger.
Well, Streetsboro would be the same way too, because that view we had, there's houses there now. They built that whole place up. And you know, I loved living in Streetsboro because we were close to the things that we needed to be close to. But that apartment, we were on the top floor in a quiet building. And when we get there, all we would see are trees and fields. And it just, it felt like you were a million miles away from everything. And it was like for me, because, you know, we were somewhat making a living. It was like pure escapism for me being up there.
Right. You know, it was.
You know, the Tempe that we know is gone. The Streetsboro we know is gone. Kent, though, is quite the same. Tara and I were there in
The vibe feels the same.
2015, and it's actually the same, but almost a little cooler.
It's
Nice.
Yeah. I feel completely detached from everything because the Ohio that I knew is gone. But I don't feel particularly attached here either. So I'm just like what do they call that? A fish without a home? I don't know is that a saying?
Let me just backtrack here. No, the Ohio you knew isn't gone. It's very much the same. You changed because Ohio Ohio hasn't changed at all. You were the
anomaly.
You were the anomaly, but as we well know, it's still the same.
Yeah.
And it's better that we're out here, and it's better that you're probably in northern Michigan.
Right.
That's a question. You're in northern Michigan, but you live in Wisconsin. But is it because Iron Mountain is the main city there? Is that what it is?
It is. Actually, I could throw a football across the border of Wisconsin to Michigan.
Yeah.
And I drive in every day to work in Michigan.
And it's because it's the main city, right?
Yep.
I mean, where you live is basically just part of Iron Mountain, but it just happens to be across the border.
Exactly. Right. It's 15 minutes it takes me to get to my job. And then the border is probably less than a quarter mile away. Well, actually, like probably, it's definitely less than a quarter mile away.
Yeah.
The Menominee River is 100 yards. It's like 200 yards away from my house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. We envy that you get to live up there.
We could come pitch a tent like on the back acre of your.
Watch those crazy coyotes, though.
Right. You guys could move in because the house we're in right now is like it's made for a family, not just 2 people and 3 dogs. It's ridiculous.
Well, it seems like things are stabilizing out now, but maybe like a week ago, we were like going, what the hell, man? I was looking at the Canadian immigration policies there for a bit.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
On that note, we've been talking for over 2 hours now. And I'm trying to keep these around the 2-hour mark. So we can keep talking, but I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
So,
hey, man, thanks for coming on. It was great talking to you.
And we can, of course, do these however many times we feel like doing them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. That'd be great.
We'll probably I'm sure. I mean, we all still have a million stories. We barely scratched the surface.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's interesting about these shows is that when I start thinking about what I want to talk about, they always go in a different direction. The one that me and you did, Tara, together, it went completely in a different direction than I thought. The one we did with John Fair last week went in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
There's just lots to talk about.
Yep. And we haven't seen each other in so long. So it's like, we're talking. So,
Right.
okay, so I'm going to stop recording and then we can go from there. So,
Nice.
bye.
Nice.
Bye, everybody. Thanks again.
Bye.